Thank you also very much for such wonderful presentations and such interesting and innovative projects. Yes, I would very much like to open this up to anyone who has questions, but I'm going to take a personal liberty here and ask the first question, which is, how did you all decide on your topic? How did you select your topics?
I look at my strength, what I can do in terms of this research. I am coming from an artistic background, and looking at the definition of the project, it includes artistic expressions that continue to bring about well-being in the Delta, and well-being to women and girls in the Delta. So with my strength from the art background and from an artistic background, I felt that I'll be able to do something with such strength. And also, I believe that as an outsider, it would be quite interesting to generate or to be part of this research, and then to see how what I can get out of it. And the last thing, I will also say that my introductory class that I had shaped my mind about the Delta. I'm coming from a developing country, Ghana. And so ideas that I am being exposed to here is not so new to me. I can relate to them, to some of the ideas that have shaped my background. So I feel that with my background and with my knowledge, it will be quite useful to pursue this angle of research. Thank you.
Yeah, so I can go next, as my thinking goes like a little bit similar with Faisal. So yeah, my first class in Delta just pushed me a lot about Delta region. And then previously I was working in the archives, but suddenly I have known that the Icon Sisters project, it was like the NYIT and Heritage Studies Department both are going to initiate a project. And from that moment, I was very excited to involved in that project. So I also told my professor, Dr. Laurie, that I really want to involve in this project. And when I got involved in, I was attended some of the like NYIT and Heritage Studies presentation, and then it helped me to decide okay, I want to do something which is connected with the Delta and also the women. And also I have my master's thesis was related to women, so I had a plan to do something with women. So everything just connect the dots, and finally I decided to do my dissertation with this topic.
It started with mainly my background in economics and finance, and I looked at the region here, which has unique challenges, but it's not necessarily unique to the Arkansas Delta. A lot of the issues and the analysis and solutions can be mapped onto a lot of the regions, particularly where I'm from, Sri Lanka. And it also has a similar region that adjoins one of our longest rivers. And the agriculture, when agriculture left the region, there are marginalized communities still living there. So it was one of the ways for me to find parallels and personal experience to work, to connect to finding solutions to problems. And then another thing is because I worked at a museum, and usually when it comes to developing an underdeveloped region or a region that's usually associated with poverty, the first thought is tourism, how tourism and cultural tourism is the thing that's going to revive it. And when you actually, when the feet's on the ground and you walk around the region, you realize where the challenges are. So that's why I thought for a different approach, particularly using virtual tools, which is now at our disposal. Tools like a heritage trail, which I have, we're using open source tool from Northwestern University, for example, for this project, to kind of create a map and to talk about the region. And so I decided that this, worked well with my background about looking at it in a different angle from what the established literature right now talks about in terms of creating cultural heritage tourism, like in a region?
How I arrived at my project it started out selfishly because years ago I started doing research on my family history to learn more about my paternal and maternal side. But a few years into that, I had the opportunity to start working for an organization in Little Rock that was working with civil rights and race and ethnicity initiatives. And so through that work, I got to learn more and more about the civil rights struggle right here in Arkansas, the kind of movements that isn't talked about on a national stage. And through that, I started to learn more and more how there were people on the grassroots level, people at local levels that never got talked about or were never recognized. That were really the backbone of both the movements in the state and the nation. And so I started to do more work trying to gather research on those local people. And through that, I learned more and more that my ancestors were part of not only the civil rights struggles, but also establishing their own town after slavery. So I felt like their story, like a lot of stories in Arkansas history, hasn't been told, hasn't been properly researched. So who better to dive into it than me? So I basically wanted to not just talk about it, but be about it. So that is what attracted me to the Heritage Studies programs, that I felt like it would be a great fit for what I want to do with research in history and heritage from the African-American experience in Arkansas.
Thank you all very much for your answers. And now any of our audience members, please feel free to ask questions. I've got other questions, but I don't want to monopolize. So please feel free to ask a question.
Dr. Jones-Branch, at risk of embarrassing you, I'd like to talk a little bit about how the Arkansas Sisters project came to be.
Okay.
And the genesis of it was that Dr. Jones-Branch and Dr. Laurent at NYIT were talking, and I guess you shared your book with Dr. Laurent, and you all were looking for ways to connect with the Heritage Studies program, medical humanities, different ways. And we arrived at the notion of a project that focuses on women. And notably, all of the students in the program who are working in this area are working from a rather small amount of scholarship, and the seminal work really is yours. And I just think it's wonderful and unexpected, and it took a different perspective and input to make us get us to realize that we were operating in really similar areas in our research. And here we are. So I just want to give you credit.
Well, thank you. I'm very grateful to have been a small part of this. And you know, I've only scratched the surface, so I'm looking to you folks in your very robust projects to take this to the next level.
But I'm also very interested, Dr. Branch knows this, in history. And I've been researching some of Arkansas history and actually how Arkansas students were taught in, I believe it was 1920, well, probably about 1935. So I found an interesting book that was published in 1927. And it pretty much shocked me. And in fact, the book would probably not be allowed in schools today. So my question is, how much have the students researched what was taught, or what was taught back and historically for Arkansans and for high school students. How has the history of how they've been taught, how has it affected what they're learning today, or what they're seeing as far as how has history affected what they know now? And Dr. I know your work is just awesome, but it's just crazy to think how much history back then in the textbooks could not be read. I don't think so. You will be shocked. I'll see in what I have, but so just tell me, guys, how what do you think? Have you guys reviewed any books from the 20s? Because it would blow your mind.
I can chime in. I hope I understand your question correctly. It sounds like you have a concern that I have about what is actually being taught as far as history to students in the public school system. And when it pertains to African-American history, not much, right? And especially back in the 20s, Arkansas was a very young state when it came to public education, period, for all students. And it was even more lackluster for African-American students. I can't say that I've read any actual textbooks from the 1920s, but I did read some government reports when I was doing some research on the Julius Rosenwald schools that were built specifically for African-American children post-Civil War. And the statistics in those reports will shock you. I don't want to misquote, but to the maybe $1 that were being spent on every white child, maybe 5 cents was spent on a Black child. And you can see that in looking at old pictures of the buildings and the disparities in the resources and the books and et cetera. So you're right. There is still a great disparity in what is being taught. And of course, there's all these debates politically about what can go into textbooks. So it's up to us, I think, as future scholars, researchers, educators, future policymakers, to make sure that we find other innovative ways to get true histories out there, because the complete history, no matter what ethnicity, demographic that you're focusing on, is just not being shared in the public schools.